It's been said a bard's life can often be a hard life, or hill and jail to rove and always move from town to town. And some folk have inquired if ever we grow tired of ranging all around the world and never settling down.
But one should be a little wary of remaining stationary, 'cause comfortable is lovely, but it's not the way we grow. When life starts to unravel, pick up your pack and travel. You'll find a strange serenity in places you don't know. Wriggle-dee-dum-dee-too-da-terry-o-dee. There's so much to see beyond the open door. It's outward bound we go. Who knows what we'll find that we've never found before. Adventures waiting further down the road. It's waiting for you further down the road. You've got no map for showing which direction you are going.
But why start on a journey if you know where it will end?
And once you recognize,
to anticipate surprise, you'll relish every twist and turn that lies around the bend. Wriggle-dee-dum-dee-too-da-terry-o-dee-da-dee-da-dee. There's so much to see beyond the open door. It's outward bound we go. Who knows what we'll find that we've never found before. Adventures waiting further down the road. It's waiting for you further down the road. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. La-da-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. La-da-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. The world has got its demons. There are many reasons why you'd find it harder to be brave than be afraid. But every life could use some danger. Every friend was once a stranger. Ships are safe in harbor, but that's not why ships are made.
Wriggle-dee-dum-dee-too-da-terry-o-dee. Dee-dee. A fwit-dee-dee-dee-dee. There's so much to see beyond the open door. It's outward bound we go. Who knows what we'll find that we've never found before. Adventures waiting further down the road. It's waiting for you further down the road. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Ya-da-da-da-da-lie-da-lie. Adventures waiting further down the road. Let's go! Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. Lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie-da-lie. La-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. La-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Good evening, friends, and welcome back to Gothic Horror Gaming here on Net 21 Adventures. Tonight is a little bit different. We're taking a little bit of a break. We just finished our most recent chill game that we will talk about in a few moments. And so we thought tonight we would do a little grab bag of things. Handler Z is here with me. I'll bring her on in just a moment. But we figured we'd do maybe some story reading, maybe do some writing prompts, and have Handler Z write something while I read something different, and then present a short story based on your prompts afterwards. Take questions about the most recent game, what just happened with that, and maybe some extra surprise little tidbits as we go along. But I would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, as always. First, Ren Adventures, renadventures.com. Go ahead and check them out. They are doing a tour in New Orleans coming up very soon. Very soon, on a galactic scale. December 5th through the 9th this year. You come on down to New Orleans, you do some tours, and then you also play D&D 5e while you're down in New Orleans. And it will culminate eventually in a trip to the Louisiana Renaissance Fair, where many of us will actually be performing, many of the regulars here on this channel. Myself, Shakespeare Proves, Dan Kostelecki will be there. Paulo Garbanzo obviously will be there. Some of the other players that you have seen, Katie Hauser, who's been on both Chill and the Delta Green games we run, and a host of other people will be showing up that you might know. So please check that out. Also want to thank our other friends, 3D2U. They are currently vending at the New Jersey Renaissance Fair in person, but you can always go to 3d2u.org. They make dice trays, dice boxes, journals, 3D printed and laser woodcut as well. So check them out there. And of course, our normal plug for ourselves, we have a book. It is called Dare. It is short stories and poetry by Handler Z, Melissa Lee, and they are available on Amazon as a paperback or as a Kindle version, and also available as an audiobook, which I narrate, except for, I want to point out, the poetry Handler Z does herself. So you can check that out. It's over on Amazon or Audible. And then we have a Patreon that goes along with that. Our Patreon is Patreon.com/quill and quote. You have to put the backslash in, otherwise it doesn't show up because it is adult material. It is horror and such. So check that out there. And also, hey, yes, we do. For those of you who have been asking, Handler Z is in fact doing very well. 21 weeks and some change along, and people were asking about, is there a baby registry? There is now. There it is. Target gift registry, gift the baby Z. So feel free to check that out. And speaking of Handler Z, why, here she is now.
Hello.
Hello. Yes. We are in different locations, by the way, for those of you who are curious. Handler Z is back home
temporarily
at our domicile in Pennsylvania, and I am currently doing the Tennessee Renaissance Fair. So I am in Madison, Tennessee, just outside of Nashville.
Yes. And I am drinking decaf coffee and ginger ale, and I didn't show you this before, but this was Sally gave me this. Sir David Percival, and I have half of it left, and I will slowly be snacking on that throughout the show.
So thank you, Sally. Thank you, Sir David.
Thank you both for bringing that to us at NJRF. Yeah,
you have fascinated a woman by giving her cheese.
I'm very fascinated.
There we are.
I was very excited. That's the nice thing about. There's a lot of pregnancy stuff, and the one thing I read was you're not supposed to eat soft cheese except if you can guarantee that it's pasteurized. And most American cheeses are completely pasteurized. It's a requirement for American cheese. So no matter what if it's coming from somewhere in Vermont, you're fine. If it's coming actually from France, that's when you have to be careful. So it's weird stuff. Oh no, she's bringing me more cheese. There's more cheese on Saturday. I'm very excited.
So I thought we'd start it off here this evening with if you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments. anything about the game that I just ran, how we created it. We'll talk about that if you want. Um,
Yeah.
Anything about rules, role playing games in general, Renaissance fairs in general, performance in general, voiceover, singing. It's kind of like an ask me anything,
Yeah. AMA.
a little bit of an AMA, and then we'll get into some spooky story reading after that. So
I'm still burping like crazy, so I apologize in advance.
I am too, but mine's because I'm drinking a Yazoo Kala IPA.
Ooh.
Um,
I have Canada Dry Ginger Ale today.
I have this is what I'm working on right now.
Very nice. Ooh.
This is very local to where I
Tennessee.
am in Tennessee. It is the brewery is 3 miles from where I'm sitting, and I haven't been there yet. So I will probably do that on Friday.
They disappoint. I'm also happy to answer stuff about like pregnancy stuff. I am here. They're here. It feels weird. It almost feels like have you ever been to like a seance and you're like, I feel a presence kind of situation, except the presence is painful and it's poking me. It's like,
All right. So we have a couple questions that come in. So
okay.
we'll start with Sir David Percival's first. What is your favorite fair to perform at? And I will turn it over to Handler Z to begin.
I will probably say Louisiana. Louisiana folks absolutely adore Chase Treasure. We love being there. They are a ton of fun. They buy us drinks, they buy us food. They're super, super generous and super, super kind. It is a surprisingly mixed audience for being in rural Louisiana. That there are a lot of people that come in from the city and a lot of people that come in from the country, and they're all very open and wonderful with us. And it also is really nice to be able to perform in a spot where Tom is as well. That's like, that never happens most of the time. Like, I'm about to leave on Monday to go to Oregon because we're doing a show out in Oregon.
I will return from Tennessee on Wednesday, so I will miss her by like 2 days.
Yeah. And this is kind of the reality that we're bringing our kid into, is just there will be times where mom's going to be home and dad isn't. And there's going to be times where dad's going to be home and mom isn't, because that's our lives. That's what we do. So it is always a super, super nice thing when we actually get to perform together in the same space. But I am curious how you're feeling about this.
My favorite fair? I have two. I mean, technically I have three, because it depends on what you're talking about.
Sure.
If you're talking about my favorite Renaissance fair, the question is, what is my favorite Renaissance fair to perform at? I like Louisiana as well, because the people there are wonderful. I get along very well with the ownership there.
Yeah.
I
We're lovely
consider
people.
them friends. We also we got married just down the road from the site, and then had our reception at the fair
Mhm.
during the off season. So that it will always have a special place for me. Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair at Mount Hope, is my home show. It's where I started
Yeah, me too.
in 1992.
Ooh, I was there. I don't have pictures with you, but I do remember the funniest thing was when we first started hanging out, I brought in, in 2011, I was on cast and I brought in a bunch of the old programs because my mom used to collect them. So I brought in programs that had his face on them. And like, we're all just kind of like reminiscing and like, oh my God, like you were there. Like I distinctly remember you in Trial and Dunk. Yeah.
95, 96, I did Trial and Dunk. So
Yeah.
So Pennsylvania will always hold a special place for me because of that. Also, it is very different than almost every other fair in the country. Has such a large in-house cast, very permanent structures, and it's got it's all flush toilets everywhere, everything like that. It's a completely different experience.
Yeah, the infrastructure of Pennsylvania is spectacular. I can't complain.
I describe it more like it's a Renaissance fair theme park, and that's not a bad thing. It's just a different thing. So there's that one, but my absolute favorite to be at, just in general, all around, is the one I'm at right now, the Tennessee Renaissance Fair. I've been here for 20 years. It is delightful. The audiences are great. The audiences are smart. They get all of our dumb, weird, off the wall jokes. We do improv. I'm doing the Buckle and Swash show here with Ryan Gilotti, who's a regular on the channel as well. So we have an improv section in our one show that we ask for suggestions from the audience. And just to give you an idea of how this audience is here, they will ask, we will ask for suggestions about different things. And we have gotten things like the Magna Carta, Archimedes, the Code of Hammurabi. These are things that are offered as suggestions for us to use in our show. So just from that end alone, it's amazing. And then when we make jokes about those things, they get it. So one of the things we've been doing recently, our stage here moved. It moved about 15 to 20 yards from where it used to be. But they disassembled it and they reassembled it at the new spot. We can tell because they numbered all the planks with pencil, so we can walk around and look at our stage and go, this is number 7, this plank was number 8, this is number 9. So they took it all apart and they put it all together at the new spot, to which we have been making, does that make our stage the stage of Theseus? Which is the philosophical argument of the ship of Theseus.
Right. Is it still the ship if it's just pieces of it or something like that?
Right, because they did replace some of the pieces. So some of the places pieces have been replaced. It's in a different spot. Is it still the pirate stage, or is it the stage of Theseus? It's a whole, that philosophical thing. So we mentioned that during our pre-show, and there's always a segment of the audience that gets it right away. And I'm just like, you guys are.
That is a very specific reference. I don't even know that I would pick up on.
It's amazing.
My dog is here. Would you like to see the dog?
So there we go. That's the question. I think answered.
Where's my
boy? With that question, I'm going back up because we've got a role-playing game question. Hey, there's my boy.
I just had to show the dog on the screen because he's sitting here being cute. So dog on screen.
There's my boy.
This is Oz.
That's Ozymandias.
Yeah. I took him to the vet the other day and they were like, okay, how do you pronounce this? And I'm like, you've never read a comic book before?
Or Yeats?
Byron?
Oh, wait, no, it's Byron, isn't it?
I think it is Byron, yeah.
Or is it Shelley?
I don't think it's Shelley.
No.
Percy by Shelley? No.
Yeah.
I think it's Byron.
No, there's just no way to know.
Do you want to look it up? Go ahead.
There's no way to know. But it's from that poem, Ozymandias. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair.
Yeah.
It is Shelley.
Oh, it's Shelley. It's the Shelley, the boy
Shelley. Yeah. So there we go. But I wanted to go back to this to a role-playing game question that was
sure.
Have you ever had a player who died in a horror game and got seriously upset about the intractable nature of the gaming situation?
Ooh, we've had players specifically in Delta Green. We've had players die a couple of times, but no one's been so mad about it. They just kind of accept that that's the way things happen. And especially in Delta Green, you kind of accept going in that your character is probably not going to last long. We haven't had anyone go straight up crazy. That's happened in other situations that I've played where you lose all of your sanity and you eventually just go mad. Or
Mike Nustel was deliberately mad. Mike Nustel was deliberately mad in your game.
Now that was fun. That was a great conceit. And everyone's like, we're gonna protect him at all costs. And I was like, guys, you have no idea. I was so excited.
He's a crazy serial killer.
Excellent character choice that he made. I really, really loved that. Yes, Sir David Percival mentions Katie Bourbon has died twice. Yes,
it's true. So I think because it's a horror game, the players are not overly upset when their characters die because it's a horror game. It's going to happen sooner or later. A character will die, and I think it's really a matter of the attitude of players. Like when I've run private games. I've had characters deliberately get themselves killed because one, it fits the genre, and two, it furthered the story. And
Mhm.
they like I had one guy, um, it was a chill game, and they were surrounded by werewolves on an island. They were holed up in the old schoolhouse on the island in a snowstorm, and they had to get to their cars to get away. But their building was surrounded by werewolves, and the one guy goes make a run for it, and he just burst out the door, guns blazing, knowing that he is dead. While the rest of the party ran and got into the vehicles and got to the boat docks, and he was totally expecting to die, and he was totally down with it. He's like, "Nope, this is the image that a horror movie has." So he did it, and it was fantastic.
That's
So yeah,
yeah.
again, your player's attitude toward character death um, is is very important. Um, I've had it happen in regular role playing games where characters have died in like just fantasy games, D&D, Pathfinder, that sort of thing. And again, if you handle it right, it actually adds to the story rather than is a bad thing. It actually
Yeah.
helps.
I would say as a player, the only thing that I get super frustrated with, it's not necessarily that my character's going to die. It's more that when my character dies because they were being ineffective in a particular situation. I've had a couple of close calls with with a character that I've played in Starfinder, who's a pilot, and I'm really, really good at piloting, and I'm really, really good at being stealthy, and I'm really, really good at technical stuff. So I'm really good at computer things. But when it comes to one-on-one combat with things, like we kept getting space vampires thrown at us, I'm practically useless. And it gets very frustrating to be like, okay, do I need to respec this character so that I can actually do anything? Or do I just hide in the background while all of my friends fight this thing and desperately try to avoid it? So that's the only time where I feel like when I get low on hit points in those situations, I feel very frustrated because I'm ineffective. But I haven't had anyone like just straight up get mad about like dying because it just it's a horror genre. Someone's gonna die.
Hmm. Um, so going back to Renaissance Fair questions,
Questions.
uh, Monroe Max.
Ooh.
If something happened to your current fair performance, Buckle and Swash or Chase Treasure, do you have any ideas about a different performance you would like to explore?
Okay. No, I'm not giving you any cheese. Stop it. I love you. Uh so the convenience and the wonderful thing about doing Chase Treasure the way that I've done it is that I don't have to be there. So it's if I were suddenly to be like, you know what, I just don't feel like doing this anymore, I could still run the company while not actually physically performing in it. The things that I would want to explore, I would love to go back to do jousting. I did Master of the List 1 year in 2014 and I absolutely loved it. I would love to go back and just be on a horse and yell at people for a living. That would be great. Or I would love to I have a friend at the Connecticut Renaissance Fair called Phoenix Taliesin, and he is a storyteller. And I would love to do something like that where I could take a lot of the old scripts that I've written for New Jersey and some other shows and maybe bring it on the road just as a solo storyteller for kids. I think that I could throw something like that together and make something a little bit more engaging and interesting. I think that'd be fun.
Hmm.
Yeah. What about you?
Um,
What if you like tore your ACL and you couldn't do sword fighting anymore?
um, so I have, I also have a mud show that I run in Pennsylvania and that I perform in.
Sure.
Um, but I've thought about doing a storytelling show as well.
Yeah.
Um, uh, like a one man trunk show kind of storytelling show, pulling people up. Because I've done ad hoc ones where I've been in situations where, oh crap, I need to do a show, but I don't have my sword fighting show partner for whatever reason. And I'm like, oh no, what do I do? And I've pulled out a one person pirate storytelling show from bits and pieces of shows that I've cobbled together in the past. So I'm like, oh crap, I need to do this. I would like to maybe try to do that more deliberately at some point, um, but not pirate. Um, I like pirate. Pirate's great. I would love to do something that maybe fairs don't have or haven't seen, and also that could be maybe spread out. I've always wanted to do, just as a cosplay kind of idea, a dark fairy, like
Ooh.
a winter court kind of fairy
Like
character.
with wings or like a big crazy crown sort of
I'm
situation?
not sure. I haven't decided. Um, I think in dark wings would be nice, and I would love to sit and tell like traditional, um, like Fey type stories, like Celtic legends that include the Fey, that sort of thing. I think that might be a lot of fun and very different. But
Yeah.
again, I also would like to do Viking stories too, although Viking is getting kind of very oversaturated right now. So I don't know that I
Yeah,
would.
I know other people that do Viking storytelling.
Yeah, so I don't know that I want to do Viking per se, but
Yeah.
like
I
old
would love to do
Celtic.
stuff at cons, at conventions. I think that would be really fun. Being indoors would not be a bad
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, that would not suck.
Like, ooh, I'm not going to get rained out today, and I don't have asthma. Hooray!
I know a lot of Renaissance Fair musicians in particular who also do cons, um, and do Celtic and or fantasy music in and convention settings. I am not a musician, and I don't feel like putting in the effort to become a serious one.
I
I don't.
am, but my issue is a lot of cons want you to be steampunk, and that's a whole $500 worth of outfit that I need to invest in before I can move my group into something like that. I'd love
Oh,
to do it,
oh,
but
if you're to move all of Chase Treasure in there, yeah.
yeah, if we had a Chase Treasure team that went to a con, even a con in this area, like even a con on the East Coast of the United States where a lot of our teams are based, um, it would be a completely separate outfit. Some people could probably throw it together pretty easily, but I wouldn't want to. Why change the show fundamentally unless it makes total sense? It would be fun to do, especially in the off season when it's like super cold out, to do some conventions inside. But um, I kind of like having the time off and the brain space to just be like, nope, I'm gonna concentrate on something else in February instead of trying to work absolutely everywhere.
Yeah. So yeah, those are some other options for Renaissance Fair performances,
Oh,
Monroe.
cool.
That um, I mean, we do other stuff obviously besides Renaissance fairs. So I assumed you meant specifically Renaissance fairs.
Yeah. I feel like you're gonna get dragged into a romance novel convention at some point.
Yeah,
Just by
that might very well be. Um, I am
saying.
currently in the process of recording an audio a series of 3 audiobooks that are a supernatural romance series for a former Renaissance Fair performer as well.
Yeah,
Um, she has quite a following. Lee Colgan, she's got quite a following going on.
it's really
Um,
good.
she's a very good writer. I've narrated some supernatural romance before that
Which
have
are
been,
okay, but every once in a while you're like, nope,
yeah,
this could be better.
right. Um, this material that I'm reading right now, I'm just like, oh no, this is actually incredibly well written. It flows very well. Um, it's actually enjoyable to record. Whereas I've done some books where it's just like, oh, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Not so with these at all.
This is your endorsement to, if you're going to write anything, get an editor or at the very least a beta reader who can tell you where you've messed things up. It's no reflection on your skill or your quality of material. It is 100% just I don't understand this. Can you explain this better? Or use the same word 3 times in the same sentence. Like it's just simple things like that that really change how you're writing. And especially like I send a lot of my stuff to him first. And he'll read through things and give me suggestions and tell me where things aren't working and where things are. And that changes the dynamic of stuff so much. If you don't edit your stuff, no AI is going to fix that you've reused the same word 4 times in the same sentence. They're just gonna be like, well, you're using it properly, so whatever. It's yeah. Boop.
So, if are there any other questions about Renaissance fairs, role playing games, horror games, horror in general? Feel free to throw them in the comments. For those of you who are just joining us, we're doing sort of this is a bye week for us.
Yeah,
Hannah
I
T
still need
had
to get some players together, and I am putting together a Delta Green game, but I don't have everything put together just yet. So I'm giving myself the space to do something fun.
Yeah, because you're doing New Jersey right now.
Yes, yeah. This week is going to be very exciting, but very intense. We have our Chase Treasure has our after hours concert on Saturday night, so that's going to be our 10th birthday, which is really exciting. We've been doing the show for 10 years. Specifically at this show, this is where we first started. So we're super excited to do that. It's going to be a lot of fun and a lot of good material, and I'm very excited for it. And we're going to have like some of our friends are going to roast us before we get started. So it'll be really fun. But that is a lot of my brain space is going towards that event. And then immediately after that on Monday, I have to get in a car and start driving to Oregon. So there's a lot. There's a lot taking up space currently.
So we'll get back to that. We'll come back around the Delta Green after that.
Would you like to talk about how you put together the spider game? Because I kept some of the images just because I remember talking about some of this and like that thing is so cool. Sorry, I should have trigger warning that before we did this, but that is a Juro spider. They really are enormous. And I just, by the time we got around to actually revealing the spider and the Spider Woman, I was like, I was so excited.
Well, so the game, that particular adventure, the one we just completed last week, we had done the train one and that got stuck in the Donner Pass with those characters. And everybody really liked those characters, so I wanted to bring them back. Handler Z, because of New Jersey, was not in a position to run a Delta Green, so I just ran another chill really quick. So I kind of threw that together relatively fast. And originally, I only had 3 of my 4 players were available. Ryan Gilotti was not available. So I'm like, okay, well, what can I do that 3 of them can deal with and take care of? We established that they got to San Francisco and they're set up there. Okay, so it's going to be San Francisco. We'll give them a year to settle in. So we'll make it 1872. Now I have a place and a year. So then I went to Wikipedia, which is wonderful if you are looking for like things to for prompts for your games. Like sometimes Wikipedia's information can be a little dubious, but it's great if you're making a role-playing game. It's good enough. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate as long as it gives you the prompt, the idea of what to do. So I looked up, I'm like, what's going on in San Francisco in 1872? The other thing that was in my brain about it was a lot of my games of late have tended to be the bad guy is actually a human doing something, meddling with the supernatural in some way, shape, or form. And I wanted to have just a straight up monster. This is just a monster. That's it. So that was the other thing that was going on in my brain. And so I looked at, well, yeah, there she is. The Juro Gumo, Juro Gumo.
Juro Gumo, yeah.
Um,
And then the spider is named after that, after this demon. It's not
correct.
the other one.
So I look at the timeline of San Francisco, and I found online here's a year by year important things that happened in San Francisco from its founding on, and I'm at 1872, and that's when the Bohemian Club is established. And then I was like, but there was nothing really else there. I'm like, okay, well, what else? 1871, the completion of a rail line. Okay, yeah, we already touched on that. Scroll back just a little bit further, and I see establish of a Japanese embassy, and I'm like, really? That's interesting. So I researched that a little bit. Um, turns out there was a Japanese embassy that sailed to California in the 1860s,
Dang.
and they went all the way across the country and ended up in New York, I believe. But along the way, it was decided to establish an actual physical embassy and consulate in San Francisco, since that was the major West Coast port at the time. So they established a building as the consulate, and they appointed an American, that Wolcott gentleman that was in the game, as the first consulate until they got around to sending over an actual Japanese citizen to be the consulate. So he was acting consulate for a number of years. He was a real person. He really did write books about Asia, and he had some ideas about that all the Native Americans were all originally transplanted Chinese, Japanese, Korean area individuals who had come on over.
That's interesting.
He wrote books on that as well. So now that's all in my brain. And then I went, well, what Japanese monsters are lying around? Because then at that point I had in my mind, what if they accidentally brought a Japanese monster into San Francisco? Doing a quick search through that on Google gave me the Spider Woman, and then the rest was just fleshing it out. Just going, okay, well, how did she get here? Okay, this is how she got here. All right, she's killed guys because she is feeding on them and then laying her eggs in some of them. Okay, great. How does this all connect? And where is her lair? What is she doing? And I originally thought about having her be in charge of an actual opium den. And I was like, no, that's going to be cliche. Same thing with a brothel. I was like, no, too cliche. And I was like, a tea house. That's different and unique. So there you go. That's how the adventure came to be. Here's my cat.
He's a massive cat. This is Aramis. He is 12 pounds.
He is getting much bigger. He's not
Look
even
at how big his face is compared to my face.
He's almost a year.
He's a year. He based on when you adopted him. No, you can't have the cheese either. Okay, well, he's going to be on the screen for a bit, being a cat. So
yeah. So there's that's how that game came about. What about can you tell us anything about the new Delta Green game?
yeah, so I'm going to set it in a modern setting, and this is going to be a little bit more investigative regarding the people that I need for this particular adventure need to be kind of in one of those alphabet soup organizations. So like a DEA, an FBI, CIA, things like that. That's going to really, really aid them. And it is based on an open source loose framework that my best friend put me in touch with, or kind of let me know about. He had run this game before with me and a couple of close friends. And it's basically here's a starting point, here's some investigative elements, here's kind of an ending, but it's just a framework and you put together what you want off of it. So I have I don't have it on me right now. I could look it up, but I do have the original author's name, and it's in a Delta Green open source database of prompts. So I didn't write it, but I know who did, and I will credit them. And it's in please enjoy this prompt level thing. So should be fun. It gets real weird real fast. That much I know. Yeah. Don't know where it's set yet, but I'll let you know soon.
Okay. Well, we have a question from Sir David Percival.
Ooh.
What is your favorite game setting as a player or game master?
Ooh.
Um, so I guess first answer is what's your favorite game setting as a player?
Um I tend to really like, just in general, I tend to really like things that are as close to reality as possible. I like being able to blend fantasy and reality frequently. I used to run an adventure called Science and Magic, and I did that with a LARP group. And the whole point was that magic is almost the same as science. You can analyze magic and get it to do its things, and that's based in specific stuff. So I always liked sticking them together. And that's for me really fun as a player as well, to be able to get as close to reality as possible. I love doing things with my best friend who is currently in the FBI, because he does exhaustive research on projects, especially with Delta Green. He really, like, if you need to write a requisition form in the US Army to get a tank, he knows exactly what that form looks like and what you have to say on it in order to get a tank. Like, he knows his stuff backwards and forwards. And those are the fun games for me, because I'm like, okay, let's see where I can break this reality. It'll be fun. What about you?
Um, I hardly do it at all anymore, and I miss it very much. High fantasy.
Oh, okay.
I I I started playing role playing games, doing high fantasy. From there, I branched off to like Star Frontiers, Gamma World, um, the original Cyberpunk role playing game. Then from there into Vampire the Masquerade,
Mm.
um, Mage the Ascension, did a little bit of Changeling here and there, and Werewolf the Apocalypse. Um, couple superhero games here and there every once in a while. Then moved on into Pathfinder, but I'm normally running Pathfinder games. And the current Pathfinder game that I'm playing in, um, is an Iron Gods campaign, which, if you're familiar with it, Iron Gods is in the Pathfinder world a spaceship crashed, uh, thousands of years ago, and you're going and you're encountering all this futuristic technology that's now blended in with the fantasy elements, and that's fine and all. But I just miss actual pure, straight up high fantasy. I would love to play a game of that again.
You can probably talk to Paolo about that.
I might. Paulo's game, Nat 21 is a very much more like Terry Pratchett, Monty Python ish version of high fantasy,
It's
which is
still
great.
against you, though. This is giving you what you want to an extent.
I want straight, serious high fantasy. I want Lord of the Rings style, or like David Eddings, or that kind of like the original Dragonlance stories, that kind of thing. Oh, if you mix Salier, mix high fantasy and horror, I think you end up with Ravenloft.
Well, and you did one time. You ran me and a couple of my best friends through a. We were the Revenant's Oath, and we were monster hunters in a high fantasy environment. And I was playing what, a Death Knight or something. What the heck was it?
You were a vampire hunter, essentially.
Yeah, I was a vampire hunter. I was playing Buffy in a fantasy setting, so she was all human and she had full plate armor, and she was marked by a vampire in her village. And she she had to that was like her whole plot, was that eventually she was going to come in contact with this vampire and kill him. And he threatened us a couple of times. He sent a gargoyle at one point, but we never actually encountered him. And then at that point, everyone kind of dispersed. But
Yeah.
I love to get back into that. And that's I think you just encountered the worst monsters is basically what happens. Like our first adventure, I think there was a head that was flying around with wings. Um that was creepy.
Oh, the Vargwill, I believe.
Vargul, something like that.
It's spelled very odd, but yeah.
It's yeah, your head just takes off of your body and sprouts wings and flies around upside down. It's
Yeah.
creepy.
Um, as far as game mastering, I'm up for pretty much running almost anything. I don't know that I have a favorite thing to game master. I like doing high fantasy. I like doing horror. I like doing sci-fi. I like running everything. Do you have a favorite to run?
Um, I like anywhere where you can really get good character interaction. So and I love being able to throw my players into fun settings. Like the last one we did was in the 1980s, and I like researched the 1980s, which was a ton of fun. And then we had that one game that was set in the 70s, and I like being able to give someone a very specific setting that you can do some research on without completely stumbling into my plot. So I think that that's kind of fun to be able to be like, okay, we're going to set this in the 90s in New York, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, and I've set some of my games in person that are real, like modern day. Like it is 2023. Here you go.
Mhm.
And I will let my players Google stuff during the game if their characters want to try to like Google certain information, they are welcome to do so. That takes a lot of prep work, so you don't accidentally paint yourself into a corner. But in
Yeah.
general,
You don't want to run into the solution in the process of going through Google, but it is
yeah,
really fun.
yeah, that is a problem with that. I'm going to go back because we do have other questions.
Sure.
So I admire how you get things to happen quickly and do short, self-contained adventures. How do you keep the games in bounds in terms of time? You have to steer characters, chop out pieces, add pieces, that sort of thing.
Let me just say straight off the gate that all the Renaissance Fair performers that we bring on here have this slightly unhinged energy to them, in spite of the fact that it is a fantasy, that is a horror setting. That we are putting them in situations of like, okay, your characters might die, and for whatever reason, they just end up in these like weird spaces. So there are a lot of times I'm not planning on having them speak to a particular character, and then suddenly they run into somebody on the street and they become like the favorite plot character of somebody for no apparent reason. And like, this is just a street sweeper, guys. There's nothing going on. He is just doing his job. Like, please leave him alone. I know you want to ask him questions, but he has no idea what's going on. So those things you don't plan for, but you just expect. Yeah.
When I plot out my adventures, I plot out with the idea that they will. For example, this last one, I was like, it's going to be 3 or 4 sessions total. And then each session, I had an idea of what happens in that act. So that first act was they're going to get all the background information they need about what's happening. People are disappearing, all that. Get some leads, let them do some investigating with that. And then I wanted it to end with like a shocking reveal kind of thing. The next one I wanted specifically to have them encounter the spider body corpse, the corpse with all the spiders in it. I wanted them to discover that. But I did not have it in a set location because I knew my players were going to go off and do whatever they were, and I don't want to steer them. I don't want to force them to go directions. So they chose to go to the tea house, and then that gave me the opportunity to sort of plant the seed. I'm like, they're at the tea house. What if they go to the opium? They go to an opium den, and that's where the body is, and it was put there by. So I made that kind of decision on the fly. I knew that I wanted that spider corpse to show up in that game. But as to where it was going to be, I kept that loose so that I could adapt to what the players wanted to do. If the players had ended up forcing their way onto the ship, the SS Sturgeon, which really didn't have anything to do with where the Spider Woman was now. It was purely coincidental that she came over on it. But if they had insisted on breaking into the ship, I would have put the body in the hold and then justified how she had put it there, how the Spider Woman had put it there. And that would have taken the game in a slightly different direction, but it still would have hit that beat that I wanted.
Still would have accomplished the same task. Yeah.
Right. If they had instead decided to break into the Japanese consulate, I would have I could have either had it there or had a clue to lead them to another location where it was. So that's kind of how I do it. I knew I ultimately wanted them to confront her at the tea shop. And I was going to make enough clues that it was obvious that that's where she is, and that's where you're going to find her, and that's where you're going to confront her. But however they wanted to confront her was totally up to them, and I just let that go. So that's how I keep things. I have beats that I want them to hit, but they're kind of floating beats, so I can stick them where they need to go to keep things on track.
Yeah, I have a scenes in my head, usually set to like a particular piece of music. So I've been like thinking through, like, I'm going to listen to this piece of music and replay this scene in my head over and over again and get a really good description of what's happening in this moment. And then the rest of it is kind of like, okay, whatever you want to do, like, let's figure this out. It is hard to predict where people are going to go with something. But I rely on the fact that all of these people are professional performers and they're going to take a moment at some point to have an emotional connection either with one another or with a random ass character, or especially in Delta Green, where you have connections to people at home, having those moments of being able to call your mom or call your your significant other. The players always reliably deliver on stuff like that. So it's basically just, here's a frame of basically where I want you to go, and here's a cool moment that I want to have happen, and then giving them a lot of space to do what they think is best. I've never had anyone rush through a plot. It's usually like okay, no, come on, go closer, get over there, okay.
Mm-hmm. There is definitely a balancing act between letting the characters interact and create character moments and role play, and also like there is a plot, guys, that you do.
yeah. Please go solve this issue. Keep in mind, when Dan and Katie's characters were like, "Let's stop for lunch," and I was like, "There's a dead body." Okay, whatever.
Speaking of which, yes, Rhubarb 14. When they knocked out the Japanese consulate gentleman, I saw an opportunity when they went there, and they're like, I don't know why Dan got fixated on the idea. It's like, we've got to have, I mean, not Dan,
Katie?
Steve-O was fixated on the idea that they needed the Japanese guys' swords for whatever reason. I'm like,
I mean, it is a Japanese demon. It's possible that maybe those swords have some kind of capabilities. They came over.
Well, and I was trying to give the impression that, no, it's just a creature that can be dispatched of in any normal mortal ways. It's going to be very tough, but it's not like you need like an obsidian tipped spear on a mahogany shaft kind of thing, like the Bat Lord in the original Chill game. Anyway, that was a weird one. But so Steve-O was insistent on getting the swords from this Japanese gentleman. And I'm like, there's no logical reason that this guy is just going to hand over his swords to people he met only once before. Like that's not a rational thing to anticipate somebody doing.
Yeah.
But I was like, that's why I said, oh, he turns his back to you to look at the swords. hoping that somebody would take the initiative. And sure enough, Katie said, "Is there a paperweight?" I whack him on the back of the head. I'm like, perfect. I wasn't going to make them do that, but I was giving them that opportunity if they wanted to. And because so many of us who are playing on the stream here are interactive performers, actors, improv actors, I knew that they would yes and that moment and take up on it and go for it. So conveniently, they did.
I found our secret third kid. Very
Our
briefly.
other cat. Yes,
Just
Katie does know what a
never
kid
ever
is.
see her. This is Lilith. She's full of grumpy. And she's much smaller than Aramis. She only weighs about 8.5 pounds, but she's much smaller. The thing about Delta Green, I will say, that lends itself to this is in those situations, it's not so much do you think someone is going to die as it is, do you think someone will firebomb a library, which happened one time when I was playing Delta Green, where there were a bunch of people that were going after a like a mummy lord or something that came into a museum, and then one of the characters had access to like freaking a SWAT team and like firebombs and stuff, and they straight up like bombed a neighborhood and basically said that they came up with a scenario where they said that there was a drug lord hiding out in the building next door or something, and then they just like blew it up. And I was like, and that's the kind of thing.
Totally moved that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Those of you in the Philly area, you know what that is.
Yeah. And that's the kind of thing in Delta Green that not that you can get away with. There are consequences to it. You could get arrested, you're losing your job, all of your bonds leave you, stuff like that. Like that's basically madness. But if that's the only way that you can see through a particular thing, Delta Green is like, okay, this is a horror game. If you want to just commit the ultimate sacrifice and make yourself the bad guy of this scenario, go for it. But yeah, like if firebombed like a Chicago museum.
Yeah, and so like yeah, exactly. So Roland in San Francisco, they set on they burned the building, and we ended with them walking away from the burning building. And during the week, I went, "Oh, there are consequences to that."
Oh yeah.
Which is why I had the newspaper report about all these people dying, and I thank you, Dan, for having his character be affected by that.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I wasn't after all of the wild, like the weird, we're just gonna investigate, we're gonna get drinks. Like Dan's character just continually drinking through the whole thing. I was like, okay, this is gonna be some kind of a thing. And then he had that moment of like sadness and catharsis and owning up to a mistake. I found that really
Well,
fascinating.
I don't even think it was a mistake. It was just the consequences of what they had to do. I mean, I don't know how else they would get out of that. But there are consequences for setting the building on fire. That's just the way it is.
Trying to get to her face. There she is. She's never up here, so I'm enjoying this while I can. There is another question that I would
there is.
Thank you. In Dare, you recommend music compatible with the story. Do you think about specific types of music while you are writing? Yeah, absolutely. For me, music is 100% how I find and write practically everything. Almost everything that I write has a listen to this while you're reading this, because I set the scenes to music in my head. Like there are beats in the song that specifically have moments attached to them. Yeah, even in Delta Green stuff, it's if it's not specifically music, sometimes it's a particular kind of soundtrack. Like the LA game, I knew that was going to be about like the Satanic Panic, and I knew it was going to be about metal music. So I had in my head like, okay, this is probably set to like a Motley Crue song. So I was just running through a couple of the early songs off of their first album, and that was just the idea of it being super, super hot in LA in July in the late 80s and driving with the windows down, that kind of situation, and listening to like a demo tape. That's how I put that together in my mind. So whether or not it's like, oh, it's rain and noise,
Good.
I
Going back to Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil. Was that on the first album?
yeah, that is the first album and also the song. They had
I'm not
an
well
EP
steeped in
before.
my for being a more heavy person as far as musical tastes go. I'm not that up on my Motley Crue until later. So
Yeah. I don't know enough about them. I've seen them tour once, which was really cool, actually. I really liked seeing them perform. Um, but yeah, music I tend to go to. I like a lot of, I mean, obviously, I like a lot of metal. I like dark, atmospheric music. Think Depeche Mode, think the Deftones, think the piece that I just forwarded to you from I wrote in 2011 was the Reinholder remix from A Perfect
Perfect
Circle
Circle.
uh, from the Resident Evil soundtrack. That usually inspires me a lot because that music has so many different dynamics to it. But I'm also happy to listen to like house music, kind of like trancy, chill, cool vibes, or pop music. Usually not like something you would necessarily hear on the radio, but I've been inspired by music by Halsey. I've been inspired by music by Bjork, which is not necessarily pop, but like obviously not metal. It comes up sometimes. I'll just listen to my Spotify recommended for you playlist, and then something will come up, and I'll be like, I have an idea, and then it almost always attaches itself to music. Do you listen to anything when you're writing anything, or are you just concentrating?
I not generally. I will put on just generic, well, not generic, but I will put on background metal when I'm doing things, but I'm not thinking about the song itself. So like, okay, I've got to create these. I've got to scroll and search through to find. What's a good example? I know. I was looking for the blueprints for the I was looking for the blueprints for the murder castle
Yes.
of H. Holmes from
Oh,
several games
such a
ago.
cool game. I loved that game. I was so proud you got there. I was like, "Yes."
And so while like I'm scrolling through looking for the right map and everything that I want to use, I'll have that on in the background, but that's more of just amuse me kind of thing.
Are you still listening to Mushroom Head, or are you moving now to Avenged Sevenfold mostly?
I still go back to Mushroom Head every once in a while and Avenged Sevenfold once in a while. I have now moved on to Seven Dust.
Oh, okay. Very nice.
That has been in my head lately. So Seven Dust is currently the the soundtrack du jour in my brain.
This is also one of the ways that he and I do dates is that every once in a while we will just sit and watch music videos. I like to call it YouTube roulette. It's not obviously there's no consequences, but it is I'll play a video, then he'll play a video based on that theme, then I'll play a video based on his theme, and we just keep going back and forth. And it allows you to really explore someone else's tastes and to find new things, which I find fascinating. So I love doing that with friends, but I really love doing that kind of as a date. It's fun.
I don't know why, but just sitting here talking right now, Depeche Mode's "Walking in My Shoes" just popped into my head.
That is such a weird music video.
It is a very weird music video.
It's so disturbing.
And now I'm gonna try it. I'm going to sit down, not right now, obviously. I'm talking to all of you, but I want to sit down here in the next little bit and sit and write my next adventure while having "Walking in My Shoes" going into my brain.
That is, yeah. That is
I'll
such a
see what
good
happens. I've never tried that before, but I'm going to try that for my next one.
do not attack one another. We are on a live stream. Thank you. It's Aramis. He's always the aggressor.
He's physically bigger,
He is. He's a much
significantly.
longer cat. So if you hear strange noises, Lily's not very loud, but she'll hiss at him every once in a while. She's hiding behind a trash can in my office, and he is crouched down, ready to go. Ugh, I had to prevent him from eating a wasp earlier today. I was like, dude, no. I'm not taking you to the hospital. No, we're not
Speaking
doing
of consequences.
it. Yeah.
So I think we've addressed all the questions that have come in thus far.
Currently, yes. Do you want to read something?
Yeah, but before we do, so we're about halfway through what we're doing here. Again, if you've just joined us, we're taking a week off in between our horror games. We just wrapped up a chill game, and Handler Z is going to do a Delta Green game starting next week. But we're taking a week in between to sort of get reorganized, and life is happening all around us. So wanted to take a quick little break. Handler Z, you mentioned about doing a writing prompt.
Yeah, my original concept for this was to do 5-minute writing prompts. We did that on the stream one time when it was me and Dan and I think Chris Koya were in it. And that was a ton of fun. So just having like, okay, I'm going to take 5 minutes and I'm going to base, I have a piece of paper in front of me already. So I was going to base whatever you threw out, I will write something.
All right. Well, we're going to give you a little bit more than 5 minutes because I have a story to read while you do that. A short horror story that will probably be about 10 to 15, probably 10 to 12 minutes long.
Okay.
Just glancing at it. So that'll give you a little bit of time to write something. So for all of you, in the comments, if you would, what would you like as writing prompts, Handler Z?
I mean, I'll take practically anything, but
Do you want like monsters, phobias, locations, that kind of stuff?
Being vague helps me because I can put my own spin on it. So if it was like, write about a spider, I'd be like, okay. If you were like, write about a spider in San Francisco in 1872, I'd be like, we already did that. I can't come up with anything better. So
what I'm asking you is, what do you want them to write in the comments?
If you can give me a setting, and a setting can be either a specific location or a specific time period, and a kind of an emotion, like I want it to be dark, I want it to be creepy, I want it to be like frightened, nervous. So a setting, an emotion, and maybe one other word to throw in. So fairy, demon.
Well, you got one already. Mushroom Man.
Mushroom Man where? I don't know.
You've got a burlesque show.
Burlesque show, Unrequited Love. That's fun.
70s.
From the set. Okay, Mushroom Man in the 70s. Oh, that takes on a very different context than what I was originally thinking. Mushroom Man in the 70s. Okay.
Well, if anybody else has got any ideas, throw them in there. If you got any other, we don't have to go with anything in particular, but just keep.
I can do combos of things too. I'm just. It's been a while since I've felt enough brain space to be able to put something together. One of the harder things about being pregnant is that I am losing some of my memory capacity at times. So I will think of something and then completely forget about it. I had to call my nurse hotline and I couldn't remember why I was going to call my nurse hotline. I was like, there's a specific reason for it. One of the reasons was to reschedule an appointment. So I did that. And then I was like, okay, and now I'm done. And then I totally forgot I was going to ask them another question. So I had to, like, a day later, I was like, oh, I have to call them back. Oh, dang, I'm sorry. And that's usually not something that happens to me.
We also got 80s and a strange
hotel room. Ooh, okay.
Is that enough or do you need more?
I could do, let me give it like one more minute just in case. but
All
I
right.
can probably do something with one of those.
Well, I will describe what I'm going to read while people are still putting their things in.
Yeah.
This is a story. It's in the public domain. um, it is by Ambrose Bierce. Bierce. He was a journalist, a satirist, writer of short stories. He disappeared in Mexico in 1913, and no one to this day knows what happened to him.
That's like a Poe level situation.
Right?
Like,
He's just poof,
fascinating.
he's gone.
Wow.
So this is a going to be a short story by him, um, called "The Damned Thing."
Ooh.
Oh, it's
And
Ruby
this
Dragon
was
is familiar. Very good.
when was this written?
When was this one
Because he
written?
disappeared in 1913, but I
So
presume
obviously it's pre 1913.
yes.
He was born in 1842, so he was actually born before Poe died. Huh.
That's wild.
I don't have a publication date on the copy of it I have right here,
Okay.
but I'm imagining turn of the century ish.
Sure. Like 1900, 1902, something like that. Okay.
Yeah, probably somewhere around in there, maybe slightly before. I don't know, but all right. Do you have enough stuff? You got Crossroads came in there too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I can throw something together.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you out of the stream,
Okay.
so that Handler Z is going to go off and write for a little bit, and then I am going to read for all of you the spooky horror story in the public domain, "The Damned Thing" by Ambrose Bierce. I will ask your apologies, as this is the first time I'm actually reading it. So this will be a go through for all of us here. Let me just get things set up a little bit, just to make it a little easier for me to read this for you guys. All right, there we go. All right, so this is "The Damned Thing" by Ambrose Bierce. By the light of a tallow candle, which had been placed on one end of a rough table, a man was reading something written in a book. It was an old account book, greatly worn, and the writing was not, apparently, very legible, for the man sometimes held the page close to the flame of the candle to get a stronger light upon it. The shadow of the book would then throw into obscurity a half of the room, darkening a number of faces and figures, for besides the reader, 8 other men were present. 7 of them sat against the rough log walls, silent and motionless, and, the room being small, not very far from the table. By extending an arm, any one of them could have touched the 8th man, who lay on the table, face upward, partly covered by a sheet, his arms at his sides. He was dead. The man with the book was not reading aloud, and no one spoke. All seemed to be waiting for something to occur. The dead man only was without expectation. From the blank darkness outside came in, through the aperture that served for a window, all the ever unfamiliar noises of night in the wilderness. The long, nameless note of a distant coyote, the stilly, pulsing thrill of tireless insects in the trees, strange cries of night birds, so different from those of the birds of day, the drone of great, blundering beetles, and all the mysterious chorus of small sounds that seemed always to have been but half heard when they have suddenly ceased, as if conscious of an indiscretion. But nothing of all this was noted in that company. Its members were not overmuch addicted to idle interest in matters of no practical importance. That was obvious in every line of their rugged faces, obvious even in the dim light of the single candle. They were evidently men of the vicinity, farmers and woodmen. The person reading was a trifle different. One would have said of him that He was of the world, worldly, albeit there was that in his attire which attested a certain fellowship with the organisms of his environment. His coat could hardly have passed muster in San Francisco. His footgear was not of urban origin, and the hat that lay by him on the floor, he was the only one uncovered, was such that if one had considered it as an article of mere personal adornment, he would have missed its meaning. In countenance, the man was rather prepossessing, with just a hint of sternness, though that he may have assumed or cultivated as appropriated to one in authority. For he was a coroner. It was by virtue of his office that he had possession of the book in which he was reading. It had been found among the dead man's effects in his cabin, where the inquest was now taking place. When the coroner had finished reading, he put the book into his breast pocket. At that moment, the door was pushed open, and a young man entered. He, clearly, was not of mountain birth and breeding. He was clad as those who dwell in cities. His clothing was dusty, however, as from travel. He had, in fact, been riding hard to attend the inquest. The coroner nodded. No one else greeted him. "We have waited for you," said the coroner. "It is necessary to have done with this business tonight." The young man smiled. "I am sorry to have kept you," he said. "I went away not to evade your summons, but to post to my newspaper an account of what I suppose I am called back to relate." The coroner smiled. "The account that you posted to your newspaper," he said, "differs probably from that which you will give here under oath." That, replied the other, rather hotly and with a visible flush, "is as you choose. I used manifold paper and have a copy of what I have sent. It was not written as news, for it is incredible, but as fiction. It may go as a part of my testimony under oath." "But you say it is incredible." "That is nothing to you, sir, if I also swear it is true." The coroner was apparently not greatly affected by the young man's manifest resentment. He was silent for some moments, his eyes upon the floor. The men about the sides of the cabin talked in whispers, but seldom withdrew their gaze from the face of the corpse. Presently the coroner lifted his eyes and said, "We will resume the inquest." The men removed their hats. The witness was sworn. "What is your name?" the coroner asked. "William Harker." "Age?" 27. "You knew the deceased, Hugh Morgan?" "Yes." "You were with him when he died?" "Near him." "How did that happen? Your presence, I mean." "I was visiting him at his place to shoot and fish. A part of my purpose, however, was to study him and his odd, solitary way of life. He seemed a good model for a character in fiction. I sometimes write stories." "I sometimes read them." "Thank you." "Short stories in general, not yours." Some of the jurors laughed. Against a somber background, humor shows highlights. Soldiers in the intervals of battle laugh easily, and a jest in the death chamber conquers by surprise. "Relate the circumstances of this man's death," said the coroner. "You may use any notes or memoranda that you please." The witness understood. Pulling a manuscript from his breast pocket, he held it near the candle, and turning the leaves until he found the passage that he wanted, began to read. "The sun had hardly risen when we left the house. We were looking for quail, each with a shotgun, but we had only one dog. Morgan said that our best ground was beyond a certain ridge that he pointed out, and he crossed it by trail through the chaparral. On the other side was comparatively level ground, thickly covered with wild oats. As we emerged from the chaparral, Morgan was but a few yards in advance. Suddenly we heard, at a little distance to our right and partly in front, a noise as of some animal thrashing about in the bushes, which we could see were violently agitated. "We've started a deer," I said. "I wish we had brought a rifle." Morgan, who had stopped and was intently watching the agitated chaparral, said nothing, but had cocked both barrels of his gun and was holding it in readiness to aim. I thought him a trifle excited, which surprised me, for he had a reputation for exceptional coolness, even in moments of sudden and imminent peril. "Oh, come," I said. "You are not going to fill up a deer with quail shot, are you?" Still he did not reply, but catching a sight of his face as he turned it slightly toward me, I was struck by the pallor of it. Then I understood that we had serious business on hand, and my first conjecture was that we had jumped a grizzly. I advanced to Morgan's side, cocking my piece as I moved. The bushes were now quiet, and the sounds had ceased, but Morgan was as attentive to the place as before. "What is it? What the devil is it?" I asked. "That damned thing," he replied without turning his head. His voice was husky and unnatural. He trembled visibly. I was about to speak further when I observed the wild oats near the place of the disturbance moving in the most inexplicable way. I can hardly describe it. It seemed as if stirred by a streak of wind, which not only bent it, but pressed it down, crushed it so that it did not rise, and this movement was slowly prolonging itself directly toward us. Nothing that I had ever seen had affected me so strangely as this unfamiliar and unaccountable phenomenon, yet I am unable to recall any sense of fear. I remember, and tell it here because singularly enough I recollected it then, that once, in looking carelessly out of an open window, I momentarily mistook a small tree close at hand for one of a group of larger trees at a little distance away. It looked the same size as the others, but being more distinct and sharply defined in mass and details, seemed out of harmony with them. It was a mere falsification of the law of aerial perspective, but it startled me, almost terrified me. We so rely upon the orderly operation of familiar natural laws that any seeming suspension of them is noticed as a menace to our safety, a warning of unthinkable calamity. So now, the apparently causeless movement of the herbage and the slow, undeviating approach of the line of disturbance were distinctly disquieting. My companion appeared actually frightened, and I could hardly credit my senses when I saw him suddenly throw his gun to his shoulder and fire both barrels at the agitated grass. Before the smoke of the discharge had cleared away, I heard a loud, savage cry, a scream like that of a wild animal, and, flinging his gun upon the ground, Morgan sprang away and ran swiftly from the spot. At the same instant, I was thrown violently to the ground by the impact of something unseen in the smoke, something soft, heavy substance that seemed to throw against me with great force. Before I could get upon my feet and recover my gun, which seemed to have been struck from my hands, I heard Morgan crying out as if in mortal agony, and mingling with his cries were such hoarse, savage sounds as one hears from fighting dogs. Inexpressibly terrified, I struggled to my feet and looked in the direction of Morgan's retreat. And may heaven in mercy spare me from another sight like it. At a distance of less than 30 yards was my friend, down upon one knee, his head thrown back at a frightful angle, hatless, his long hair in disorder, and his whole body in violent movement from side to side, back and forward. His right arm was lifted and seemed to lack the hand. At least, I could see none. The other arm was invisible. At times, as my memory now reports this extraordinary scene, I could discern but a part of his body, as if he was being partly blotted out. I cannot otherwise express it. Then a shifting of his position would bring it all into view again. All of this must have occurred within a few seconds, yet in that time, Morgan assumed all the postures of a determined wrestler vanquished by superior weight and strength. I saw nothing of him, and him not always distinctly. During the entire incident, his shouts and curses were heard, as if through an enveloping uproar of such sounds of rage and fury as I had never heard from the throat of man or brute. For a moment I stood irresolute. Then, throwing down my gun, I ran forward to my friend's assistance. I had a vague belief that he was suffering from a fit or some form of convulsion. Before I could reach his side, he was down and quiet. All sounds had ceased, but with a feeling of such terror as even these awful events had not inspired, I now saw the same mysterious movement of the wild oats prolonging itself from the trampled area about the prostrate man toward the edge of a wood. It was only when I had reached the wood that I was able to withdraw my eyes and look at my companion. He was dead. The coroner rose from his seat and stood beside the dead man. Lifting an edge of the sheet, he pulled it away, exposing the entire body, altogether naked, and showing in the candlelight a clay-like yellow. It had, however, broad maculations of bluish black, obviously caused by extravasated blood from contusions. The chest and sides looked as if they had been beaten with a bludgeon. There were dreadful lacerations. The skin was torn in strips and shreds. The coroner moved round to the end of the table and undid a silk handkerchief, which he had passed under the chin and knotted on the top of the head. When the handkerchief was drawn away, it exposed what had been the throat. Some of the jurors who had risen to get a better view repented their curiosity and turned away their faces. Witness Harker went to the open window and leaned out across the sill, faint and sick. Dropping the handkerchief upon the dead man's neck, the coroner stepped to an angle of the room, and from a pile of clothing produced one garment after another, each of which he held up a moment for inspection. All were torn and stiff with blood. The jurors did not make a closer inspection. They seemed rather uninterested. They had, in truth, seen all this before, the only thing that was new to them being Harker's testimony. "Gentlemen," the coroner said, "we have no more evidence, I think. Your duty has already been explained to you. If there is nothing you wish to ask, you may go outside and consider your verdict." The foreman rose, a tall, bearded man of 60, coarsely clad. "I should like to ask one question, Mr. Coroner," he said. "What asylum did this your last witness escape from?" "Mr. Harker," said the coroner gravely and tranquilly, "from what asylum did you last escape?" Harker flushed crimson again, but said nothing, and the 7 jurors rose and solemnly filed out of the cabin. "If you have done insulting me, sir," said Harker, as soon as he and the officer were left alone with the dead man, "I suppose I am at liberty to go?" "Yes." Harker started to leave, but paused, with his hand on the door latch. The habit of his profession was strong in him, stronger than his sense of personal dignity. He turned about and said, "The book that you have there, I recognize it as Morgan's diary. You seemed greatly interested in it. You read in it while I was testifying. May I see it? The public would like—" "The book will cut no figure in this matter," replied the official, slipping it into his coat pocket. All the entries in it were made before the writer's death. As Harker passed out of the house, the jury re-entered and stood about the table on which the now covered corpse showed under the sheet with sharp definition. The foreman seated himself near the candle, produced from his breast pocket a pencil and a scrap of paper, and wrote rather laboriously the following verdict, which, with various degrees of effort, all signed. We, the jury, do find that the remains come to their death at the hands of a mountain lion, but some of us thinks all the same they had fits. In the diary of the late Hugh Morgan are certain interesting entries having possibly a scientific value as suggestions. At the inquest upon his body, the book was not put in evidence, possibly because the coroner thought it not worth while to confuse the jury. The date of the first of the entries mentioned cannot be ascertained. The upper part of the leaf is torn away. The part of the entry remaining is as follows. Would run in a half circle, keeping his head turned always toward the center, and again he would stand still, barking furiously. At last he ran away into the brush as fast as he could go. I thought at first that he had gone mad, but on returning to the house, found no other alteration in his manner than what was obviously due to fear of punishment. Can a dog see with his nose? Do odors impress some olfactory center with images of the thing emitting them? September 2nd. Looking at the stars last night as they rose above the crest of the ridge east of the house, I observed them successively disappear from left to right. Each was eclipsed but an instant, and only a few at the same time. But along the entire length of the ridge, all that were within a degree or two of the crest were blotted out, as if something had passed along between me and them, but I could not see it, and the stars were not thick enough to define its outline. Oh, I don't like this. Several weeks' entries are missing, 3 leaves being torn from the book. September 27th. It has been about here again. I find evidences of its presence every day. I watched all of last night in the same cover, gun in hand, doubly charged with buckshot. In the morning, the fresh footprints were there as before. Yet I would have sworn that I did not sleep. Indeed, I hardly sleep at all. It is terrible, insupportable. If these amazing experiences are real, I shall go mad. If they are fanciful, I am mad already. October 3rd. I shall not go. It shall not drive me away. No, this is my house, my land. God hates a coward. October 5th. I can stand it no longer. I have invited Harker to pass a few weeks with me. He has a level head. I can judge from his manner if he thinks me mad. October 7th. I have the solution of the problem. It came to me last night, suddenly, as by revelation. How simple, how terribly simple. There are sounds that we cannot hear. At either end of the scale are notes that stir no chord of that imperfect instrument, the human ear. They are too high or too grave. I have observed a flock of blackbirds occupying an entire treetop, the tops of several trees, and all in full song. Suddenly, in a moment, at absolutely the same instant, all spring into the air and fly away. How? They could not all see one another. Whole treetops intervened. At no point could a leader have been visible to all. There must have been a signal of warning or command, high and shrill above the din, but by me unheard. I have observed, too, the same simultaneous flight when all were silent, among not only blackbirds, but other birds, quail, for example, wildly separated by bushes, even on opposite sides of a hill. It is known to seamen that schools of whales basking or sporting on the surface of the ocean, miles apart, with the convexity of the earth between them, will sometimes dive at the same instant, all gone out of sight in a moment. The signal has been sounded, too grave for the ear of the sailor at the masthead or his comrades on the deck, who nevertheless feel its vibrations in the ship as the stones of a cathedral are stirred by the bass of the organ. As with sounds, so with colors. At each end of the solar spectrum, the chemist can detect the presence of what are known as actinic rays. They represent colors, integral colors in the composition of light, which we are unable to discern. The human eye is an imperfect instrument. Its range is but a few octaves of the real chromatic scale. I am not mad. There are colors that we cannot see. And God help me, the damned thing is of such a color. That is The Damned Thing by Ambrose Bierce, born 1842 and died 19 something, disappeared 1913. So there you go. That is the story. Ambrose Bierce's The Damned Thing. I hope you guys like that one. A little bit different. Oh, it came out in 1893. All right, makes sense. My first time reading it. I would like to revisit that again at some point. I stumbled over a couple of the words because I had never read it before in my entire life. So I would like to go back and give it another shot at some point. But we have another story to attend to Handler Z. I'll bring Handler Z back on. She is busy with our cat, one of our cats.
This is Aramis. You're lucky I caught him now because earlier his butt was in the camera.
There's my boy.
He's such a nice
I
guy.
haven't seen him 3 weeks.
I know. He'll be very excited to see you when you get back.
All right. Well, Handler Z, what have you written for us?
I don't have a great title for it yet, but I
Don't worry
did.
about the title.
Okay, I did fill up a whole page.
You sure did.
To look at that. Yeah.
Look at that. Would you
yeah.
like to read it to us?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. To do that, I'm going to take myself out of the stream so you can do that.
Okay, it's not going to be super long, so
I'm not going anywhere. I'm just going to give you focus.
Okay. So yeah, I took a lot of your suggestions and a lot of your prompts and stuff, and I wrote something that has a lot to do with carpeting. So take that for what it is. But this is currently untitled, just written. I thought this was a safe space. I love the carpets here, so soft under my face, tufted and plush. I can't trust the bedding, but the swirls of the rugs have become a home for me. I let the demons out here. But today was unlucky. Some blitzed out Florida man has invaded my rented sanctums, expecting I have cash. I tell him I'm a mushroom head. I've come here for peace and quality flooring. He doesn't believe me. I tell him to leave before my friends get here. I don't have any friends, not really, but they really are coming. Once I process the psilocybin, they always show up. He doesn't believe me. A short moment before the drop occurs, I wonder if the adrenaline and the gun he's holding will process the drugs before they kick in. I wonder if this is how I die. Not lounging on the carpet as angels with torn wings crush my breath from me as I chase an even greater dragon. No. Splayed on my knees with GSR on my forehead, an instant from rescue, my inner demons a second too late. But then, Predictably, my jaw slackens as my pupils absorb as much light as the dim hotel bulbs provide. I can hear distant shouting as Florida Man aims the gun and cocks it, but my friends drip from my gaping mouth like acid slugs and melt the barrel, melt his hands, melt the stumps of his arms as he stumbles on the embracing carpet and adds new stains. After they've fed and he is gone, they crawl back in and melt on my tongue like an acid tab. I gaze at the new Rorschach carpet stains and smile. So plush, so safe, so lovely. And that's it. And I have so much fur in my nose. He's shedding. I need to brush him again.
That's
Yeah. I thought that would cover Mushroom Head and 80s and a hotel, Crossroads, bunch of stuff. I felt like that covered a bunch of bases. And that was fun to like just write in 5 minutes. So
yeah. I mean, that was. Yeah, I think you might have had 10 minutes at most to write that.
yeah, I was done well before you
Ah, okay.
finished your story. So thank you. Yeah, I could certainly add more to it and add some extra details and stuff, but I feel pretty good about it. I had that was fun. That was a fun writing prompt. And to just be like, okay, I'm gonna make it quiet and just see what comes to me. And I loved the imagery of like if you ever the carpets in the Stanley Kubrick the one about the hotel.
The Shining.
Thank you. Okay. And that's normal. That's what happens to me is I'll be able to describe something really well, but have no idea what the proper noun is for it. So yeah, in The Shining, the carpet is like some people draw a lot of significance to it. It's really not. It's just a cool. Yeah, the carpet's freaking crazy. And that was the first thing I thought of was I was like, okay, if you were in a hotel room, like, and you were in like not a great hotel, so not like a modern hotel or something that's like a hotel chain. This is like a nasty kind of motel where people who use drugs go. What would it look like? And that was the first thing where I was like, yeah, I'm embracing the laying on the floor, feeling the carpet under my face and just like doing drugs so I can let my inner demons out. But those inner demons are real and they melt people. And I added some humor into it too. I thought that some of it might be fun. So I hope that hit a lot of the requests.
I have a question for the people in Twitchlandia. That I would love to hear your opinions. So Handler Z is doing a Delta Green game coming up here for the next couple weeks.
Yes.
And I am toying with what to do next for a chill game after she is done. So I thought I would ask you now what you thought about a couple of different ideas, and that will give me several weeks to formulate my plan. So I'm going to give all of you who are watching a couple of options, and tell me if there's one that you like more than the others. So I was thinking about having another one with our San Francisco crew.
So like 1890s ish. No,
1870s. I'm not 100% sure that everybody is available for that.
Right.
Oh yes, Sir David Percival, if you can set up a poll, I will give you the options that I'm looking at possibly doing. One is the San Francisco crew. Again, I'm not 100% sure I can get those people next month, but maybe. So there's that group. There is also the Dust Bowl crew that we left. The 1930s.
Yeah, that was fun. Oh, I loved it.
So that's another one that I am considering. I've also considered doing a flat out modern one because I have not done one of those yet. A flat out modern chill game. So to see if that would be something set in the present day, if that would be something that would interest everybody, or something in a different time period. Actually, I think like maybe the Indiana Jones era also strikes me. That's coming out. The Dial of Destiny is coming out soon, but I do like the idea like a 1937-ish.
Okay.
So before the war starts in Europe, so like 1935 to 37, so slightly after the that
Okay.
Roaring Twenties one that I did, the Depression era one I did. So of those four options, or if there's a fifth one that you'd like to write in, I don't know if you can set that up on the poll, Sir David Percival. But so basically, the options on the polls are the San Francisco crew,
Yes.
the gangster crew,
Yes.
modern day, late 1930s pulp adventure kind of thing, or a write-in. Because I'm really if I get inspired by something, I can write a game about in any time period at any location. That's no problem.
There's so much that you can do in any of those given time periods. I mean, modern is a little bit harder to research, but there's always some fun things that you can dive into. There's corners of the internet that you can fall into, which are tons of fun. I love getting a lot of my inspiration from true crime. So there's always fun stuff that you can look up from the turn of the century of like weird people who died and no one knows how.
I actually don't have a Twitch window open, so I can't see the
Can't see the poll.
I can't see the poll itself.
Sadness.
So let me get to it real quick. They're gonna make an ad. Stop
it. Make sure it's muted.
I just did.
Okay, because you don't want to have a run echo thing.
Oh, there's the poll. All right.
Chernobylisk?
Like a Chernobyl kind of in the 1980s Russia. Interesting.
Oh.
It's an interesting thought.
We have a friend whose family escaped from Russia in the 1980s. He's now an archaeologist who specializes in Viking era stuff.
I did not realize that his family escaped in the 80s.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, his dad was named Grisha. And they, somewhere in the 70s or 80s, he left, like straight up left Russia to come here. I mean, because they're Jewish. So they were like, no, not safe. Let's leave.
Yep, time to go. It looks like right now it's a tie between Dust Bowl Gangsters and 1937.
Ooh. I'm sure Matt would love to be involved again, especially now that he's somewhat recovered.
Yes.
He's feeling better.
All right. I love the I love the San Francisco save characters too. I'm just not sure that I'm going to have the main person I'm worried about is Steve-O.
Right. He's about to do rehearsals in Sterling.
Right, and his internet may be very, very, very sketchy up there. So he might not be available due to that.
We'll definitely have him back in August.
Yes, we would definitely have him in
August.
August.
Be at our house, so.
Well, he probably won't be staying with us, but he'll be at the PA Fair.
Oh. I said it was safe for them to stay in August. I'm not going to explode until September.
We hope.
Shouldn't.
I think they're actually giving him housing.
Oh, okay, great.
Because he's doing the holiday stuff for them too, I believe.
Right, that's right. Okay, that makes more sense.
All right. So what I am going to do with that tie between the Dust Bowl and 1937, I'm going to say I'm going to do a 1937 one next.
Oh,
That way, I'm not dependent on getting the exact same characters back. Um, and then that gives us time to make sure. That gives us time to make sure that
Matt.
that we can use uh, either Matt or Steve was in that one too, isn't he?
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, let me.
Was Steve on that one? Or was Ryan? Ryan was definitely in it.
It was Ryan.
I thought there was another girl. It was
Oh,
Vivi.
you're right. It was Vivi.
Ryan and Vivi
Ryan,
and
Vivi, Matt,
and me.
and you.
Yeah, because that was the first time I played one of your games where I didn't know what the heck was going on.
Oh, in that case, we could do the gangster.
We could. Do you want to do my game? I forgot to ask you that.
We'll talk about that.
Okay. Sure. But yeah, I bet we could you'd have to double check with Vivi, but I don't think that she's doing any work right now.
Well,
I mean,
she's in school, but she's, I would assume, not in the summer.
yeah, I don't think she's in the summer.
All right. So I will do a what I will do is I will check in on availabilities for everybody, and I will do either Gangster or 1937, depending on who I have. With then the next one after that, in the fall, well, in August, I should be able to run the San Francisco characters again.
Yeah.
So I will definitely be able to get them back in for the San Francisco ones.
Yeah.
Probably in August. So don't worry, Rhubarb 14. We're going to get them back in.
Yep.
Because I do want to. I really
Yeah.
want to address Fallout.
Yeah.
Like what is Dan's character? What is Roland? How is he feeling? Like,
Right.
because he basically his one friend doesn't want anything to do with him anymore. The other
Yeah.
Mark.
That's the one thing
Only
that
got off. He basically only got off on a technicality
yeah.
for murder.
That is
Yeah,
the
and
only
he
thing
was
that I
he was
think.
also indulging in the opium. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think that Delta Green really does a great job of addressing things like that, where it's like, okay, you're gonna lose your bonds, you're gonna lose your, you get arrested. I had a character that got arrested one time. Like we went to jail for 7 months. It was insane. We were completely useless.
Yeah. So we'll I will check, and then as soon as we know, I'll post. Or rather, probably you will for me because I'm terrible at Discord. Post in the Discord which one it's going to be once I figure out which players I can get and
Yes.
when it's actually going to start. Probably not until July, but because you've got next.
I do. I should be able to do a good
Yeah.
chunk of June because I'll be traveling out that first week, but I have time while I'm driving to be able to do stuff. So that's not a problem. And then once I get out there running the game until we go on our vacation. We will probably take off the last week of June / first week of July because we will be driving back across the country on a lovely vacation.
From Seattle back to Philadelphia area, the long way, going down through the south because we've never been to the Grand Canyon.
No, that was the one thing we wanted to do. Was I was like, you know what we could do? We could definitely afford to go to the Grand Canyon and check it out.
We'll check out the coast road and all that on the way, and just cruise on down that direction.
But you went back up here again? Go ahead.
So with that, friends, I think that's it for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us for this weird little interim session we're doing. Next week, Handler Z should have a Delta Green game up and ready to go. We'll post that on the Facebook and in the Discord. Keep you updated on that, but it'll be the same bat time, same bat channel. Take a quick moment to once again thank all of our sponsors. We would like to thank, first of all, renadventures.com, our perennial sponsors. They're about to go over to England this coming
Yeah,
month.
that's about to get started soon.
That's about to happen. They're going over there. They're doing a castle tours and then Dungeons and Dragons 5e at night over at renadventures.com. And then this winter, December 3rd through the 9th, come on down to New Orleans. And you come on down to New Orleans, you get the chance to do the, there it is. You get a chance to tour New Orleans, see the old cemeteries, maybe do a ghost tour or so, and then play Dungeons and Dragons 5e. And then at the end, on the weekend, you'll come on up to the Louisiana Renaissance Fair for their final weekend. And you get a chance to see a lot of us perform. And Paulo and I have been talking. We're trying to arrange some sort of, I wouldn't say backstage tour, but like a VIP tour of the fair where you kind of get to like hang out with the performers a little bit, maybe see a little bit more than you normally would at a fair. Maybe we can add some of the tasting events into that. I'm not sure. We've got to, Paulo and I have to hash all that out here in the next little bit. We'd also like to thank 3D2U, our friends over there. They are making all sorts of wonderful things, 3D printing and woodcut, laser burning, gaming accessories, 3D2U.org. And of course, ourselves with our book Dare, which is out on Amazon, available in paperback, Kindle, or on Audible. Collection of short stories and poetry by Melissa Lee, Handler Z, right over there. You can also visit us on our registry. We do have a registry for our baby. If you are so inclined, our baby is due September 28th is allegedly the time.
That's going to make the end of the year is going to be a little complicated for us. So we might have to go dark for a little while until either Tom is in Louisiana and has the brain space to do things, or until the kid is sleeping.
Yes.
So we'll let you know.
We'll let you know. We'll try to make it all happen and make it all work out. And then also, of course, you can also go to our Patreon at Quill and Quote. You actually have to type in the / because it's an adult rated R material. So you have to put the / in order to get to it. I'm hoping to actually get you to flesh out that thing you just wrote a little bit.
Sure.
And send it to me and I'll record it. And we'll put that up on Patreon next.
Sure.
Cool. Again, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Tune in next week where we'll launch into a new Delta Green game, probably 4 sessions-ish or so. So until then, have a great evening. Thank you all so much. Have a great night.